And with regard to the next point, point number 16, the author rahimahullah, he said, وَالْإِيمَانُ بِعَذَابِ الْقَبْرِ وَمُنْكَرٍ وَنَكِيرٍ. He brings a new point here after the point about the balance and mizan. He brings a new point. And to have Eemaan in the punishment of the grave, and in Munkar and Nakeer. Shaykh Razan said in explanation, likewise from the Aqidah, the creed and belief of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, of the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, is to have Eemaan in the punishment of the grave, Adhab al-Qabr, and in Na'im al-Qabr, and in the bliss of the grave. So the deceased will either be punished in his grave, or he will experience bliss, enjoyment, bliss in his grave, until he is raised up on the day of resurrection. And the qabr, the grave, is a station between this world and the hereafter, and therefore it is called al-barzakh, which is the barrier or the interval. The grave is called the barzakh, barrier or interval, because barzakh means a barrier between two things. Then he gives an ayah from the Quran with this meaning. He said, He the Most High said, مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. Surah Al-Rahman, 55th Surah, ayahs 19 to 20. The explanation, He, Allah, has released the two seas. And the explained as mentioned, meaning the salt water and the fresh water. The ocean, the salty ocean, and the fresh water of the great rivers. The explanation, He has released the two seas which meet side by side. Between them there is a barzakh, there is a barrier which neither of them transgress. So Shaykh al-Fawzan is showing this word barzakh, it means a barrier. He said, meaning the salt water does not transgress upon the fresh water, and the fresh water does not transgress upon the salty, because Allah has placed a separation between them. So this does not mix with this. So therefore, al-barzakh, the barzakh, it means a separation between two things. So likewise, with regard to the life in the grave, it's called the barzakh, because it's like a separation period, an interval, a barrier in between this life and the next life. It's a barrier between. Then he said, because the abodes, the place where people will live, the abodes are three. Darul Dunya, the abode of this world, wa Darul Barzakh, and the abode of the interval period, and Darul Qarar, the abode of remaining in the hereafter. These are the abodes which the servants will pass through. The abode of this world, which is a place for action, and the place of al-barzakh, the abode of the barzakh, the interval period, which is the place for waiting, and darul qarar, the place of remaining forever, which will be the place of recompense, because Allah the Majestic and Most High says, حتى زرتم المقابر. Surah Al-Takathur, ayah 102, Surah 102, second ayah. حتى زرتم المقابر. The ayah with regard to death. It is mentioned until you die, or literally, حتى زرتم المقابر. The explanation, until you enter and visit the graves. So death is mentioned here as being a visit. Shaykh Fawzan, he said, so this shows that the graves are not a place of permanent residence. This just reminds me of a point here, just a side point. Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah, used to criticize people when they said about someone, like the disbelievers say, and sometimes Muslims take it on as well, that when they say about somebody has died, they say he's gone on to his final resting place. And they take his coffin one day, put him in the ground, and they say he's gone on to his final resting place. So Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah criticizes that this is not the final resting place. This is a wrong statement and a wrong belief. This is not his final resting place, of course. After that, after the grave, there is either paradise and the hellfire. That is the final place, not the grave. So just back to what Shaykh al-Albani said, he said, quoting the ayah, he said, so this shows that the graves, حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرِ, until you enter and visit the graves. I mean, until you die, you enter and visit, as a visitor, the grave. So this shows that the graves are not a place of permanent residence. Rather, a person who is in them is just like a za'ir, is just like a visitor, who visits and then he travels on. So he made the time spent in the graves a visit, because he remains in them and then he travels on. And so that's why in the ayah, the person when he dies and goes into the grave, it's described as a zultum. You visit the graves, you're there just as a visitor. Then Shaykh al-Albani says, however, during the time when he is within the grave, when he is first placed in the grave and the soil is leveled over him and the people depart from him, وَإِنَّهُ لَيَسْمَعُ قَرْعَ نِعَالِهِمْ, then as occurs in the hadith, when the people depart from him, he will certainly hear, the deceased in his grave, he will certainly hear the striking of their shoes. And those who are departing, going away from him, he will certainly hear the striking of their shoes. In a footnote they mention the hadith occurs in Al-Bukhari as hadith 1273 and reported by Muslim as hadith 2870 as a hadith of Anas radiallahu anhu. So when this happens, the person is put in his grave and the people depart from him. Shaykh Fawzan said, then two angels will come to him in the grave and they will make him sit up, and his soul will be restored to his body, and he will be given life, a life of barzakhiyah, a life of this interval period. And it is not like the life which is in this world. So they will ask him, these two angels who come to him, they will ask him, Man Rabbuk, wa ma dinuk, wa man nabiyuk. They will ask him, who is your Lord, and what is your religion, and who is your prophet. So if he gives a correct answer to these questions, then he is saved and he will be blissful and he will suffer no wretchedness after it, and his grave will be extended for as far as the eye can see for him, and a door will be opened for him to paradise. So its beautiful breeze and its fragrance will come to him, and command will be given for him to be given bedding from paradise. In a footnote they mention all of this occurs, and what follows as well, to regard to the opposite type of person. So all this occurs in the hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib radiallahu anhu, reported by At-Tayalisi and Imam Ahmad and Abu Dawood and Al-Hakim and others. And this hadith was declared sahih, authentic by Shaykh al-Albani in his checking of Abu Dawood and elsewhere. It's a long hadith about what happens to a person when he's put in his grave. The believer, first of all the believer, and then secondly the hypocrite or the doubter. Shaykh Fawzan continued and said, so he will continue to be experiencing delight in his grave, and this is a matter of the ghaib, a matter of the hidden and the unseen. We do not know about it. So if we were to open up a grave, we would not find anything from that, since it occurs in one world and we are in a different world. And the point that Shaykh Fawzan making, that contrary to what the like of the Mu'tazila say, who deny it, they say if you open up a grave you don't see anybody experiencing bliss. No matter how many graves you open up, you don't see anyone whose grave is as far as I can see is enjoying bliss. But Shaykh Fawzan says this, of course we don't see this. We're in one world, he's in a different world. Then Shaykh Fawzan said, as for the hypocrite and the doubter, then he will say, when he's asked, when it is said to him, who is your Lord? He will say, I do not know. Who is your prophet? He will say, I do not know. What is your religion? and say, I do not know. Even if in this world he was a learned person and he memorized texts and explanations and he memorized the language and he was a most eloquent speaker and a fine talker, but if he did not have Eemaan, true faith, then he will stammer in the grave and he will be unable to answer. When he is asked about these matters, he will stutter and say, I do not know. I heard the people saying something, so therefore I said it. So, this is the Shaykh quoting the hadith here. فيفتح له باب إلى النار ويضيق عليه قبره حتى تختلف أضلاؤه ويأتيه من سمومها وحرها ويفرش له فراش من النار. So a door will be opened to the fire for him, and his grave will be made tight upon him until his ribs intertwine, ribs cross over, and its fierce wind and heat come upon him, and bedding from the fire will be laid out for him. Therefore, as I mentioned, it's part of the same hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib. Shaykh Fawzan said, so the punishment of the grave or its bliss is established in the book and in the Sunnah. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, تعوذوا بالله من أربع من عذاب جهنم ومن عذاب القبر ومن فتنة المحيا والممات ومن فتنة المسيح الدجال. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, seek refuge with Allah from four things: from the punishment of hellfire, and from the punishment of the grave, and from the trials of life and death, and from the trial of Al-Masih al-Dajjal, the false Messiah, the Dajjal. In a footnote, they mentioned this hadith occurs in the Sahih of Al-Bukhari as hadith 1311, and in Sahih Muslim, hadith 588, from a hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. The Shaykh said, so he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to seek refuge from the punishment of the grave. And this, they mentioned the footnote again, this occurs in the Sahih of Al-Bukhari, hadith 1002, and in the Sahih of Muslim, hadith 584. As a hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. Then Shaykh Fawzan said, and there is an indication, or that, there are indications in the Quran of the punishment of the grave. There's ayahs with regard to the punishment of the grave which we might notice to begin with. There are indications in these ayahs towards the punishment of the grave. He said, He the Most High said, وَلَنُذِيقَنَّهُمْ مِنَ الْعَذَابِ الْأَدْنَى دُونَ الْعَذَابِ الْأَكْبَرِ. Surah Sajda, the 32nd Surah, Ayah 21. With explanation, and we will make them taste of the lesser punishment. We will make them taste the lesser punishment before the greater punishment. Shaykh Fawzan said, they said, many of the people of Tafsir, people like scholars of explanation, he said, they said, this is the punishment of the grave. Or it is said, it is the punishment of this world. In people of explanation, they differ what is meant by the lesser punishment here. Some of them say it means the punishment of the grave. Some say it means the punishment of this world. Then he quotes the second ayah. He said, and in his saying, He the Most High with regard to Fir'aun, the Pharaoh, and his people, النار يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا ويوم تقوم الساعة أدخلوا آل فرعون أشد العذاب. So Ghafir, 40th Surah, ayah 46, with the explanation about the people of Fir'aun after they died, that they will be exposed to the fire. They are exposed to the fire morning and evening, and on the day when the hour is established, it will be said, enter the people of Fir'aun into the severest torment. Shaykh Fawzan said, they are presented to it, they are exposed to it morning and evening. This is in the grave. After they died, they began being exposed to the fire morning and evening. And when the hour is established, when the resurrection is established, it will be said, أَدْخِلُوا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ أَشَدَّ الْعَذَابِ. Then it will be said, part of the ayah with the explanation, enter the people of Fir'aun into the severest torment. And he quotes a third ayah with regard to the punishment of the grave. Shaykh Fawzan said, and he the Most High said, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. Surah Taha, 20th Surah, ayah 124. With the explanation, and whoever turns away from remembrance of me, then he will have a tight and restricted life, and we will raise him up on the day of resurrection blind. Shaykh Fawzan said, they said, obviously again referring to the scholars, people of explanations of the Quran, he said, they said, Ma'ishatan Dhanka, a tight and restricted life, refers to in the grave, and Allah's refuge is sought. In a footnote here they mention, Ibn Kathir said in his tafsir, that it is established that Ma'ishatan Dhanka, a tight and restricted life, is established that is explained to mean punishment of the grave. This is established from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri and Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhuma. It's established from those two companions. They explain this ayah to mean punishment of the grave. As a side point, in addition to that, Ibn Hibban in his Sahih, number 3109, he brings a hadith from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he himself explained this ayah. He explained his saying, He the Majestic and Most High, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, that there will be a tight and restricted life for him. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, عَذَابُ الْقَبْرِ, the punishment of the grave. It means the punishment of the grave. Shaykh al-Albani said with regard to this report, Hasan, it is good. Good report. Then Shaykh Fawzan said, the last paragraph and last two paragraphs, he said, so the evidences proving the punishment of the grave are mutawatira, established by huge numbers, definitely confirmed, established reports which are mutawatir, reported by huge numbers of people at every level of transmission. So whoever disbelieves in the punishment of the grave from the Mu'tazila and those who adopt their way, then he is contradicting mutawatir evidences. They're even contradicting their own principle. The Mu'tazila say we'll only accept a text if it's mutawatir. Well, these texts are mutawatir and they still don't accept it. So I said, then whoever denies the punishment of the grave from the Mu'tazila and those who adopt their way, then he's contradicting the mutawatir evidences, and he will have his belief damaged, and Allah's refuge is sought, and he will be missing out on one of the fundamentals, from the fundamentals of Aqidah, creed and belief, and it is belief in the punishment of the grave. So if he is doing so muta'ammidan, willfully, knowingly, knowing of the text, but he just does so out of pride and haughtiness, and he denies, then he is a kafir, he is a disbeliever. But as for if he is doing it muta'awwilan, using a false and using a wrong interpretation, or doing it muqallidan, blind following someone, or jahilan, who is ignorant, then this person is not declared to be a disbeliever. Rather, he is declared to be astray, but not to be a disbeliever. A brief point here, Shaykh Salih al-Suhaimi, Hafidhullah, he said in his explanation, the punishment of the grave is something which the people of the Sunnah are agreed upon with consensus, ijma'. It is proven in the texts which are authentic from the book and the Sunnah, and the Mu'tazila disagree about it. So they deny the punishment of the grave because they have a belief which is that paradise and the fire are not yet created. And then later on he said, and it is something which no one from the people of the Sunnah denies. Which is the grave, no one, not a single person from the people of the Sunnah deny it. Then the final point here, he said, he's saying, wa Munkar wa Nakeer. He's saying, and Munkar and Nakeer. We have Eemaan in Munkar and Nakeer. Shaykh Fawzan said, Munkar and Nakeer are two names of angels who will come to him in a terrifying form. One of them is called Al-Munkar and the other is called Al-Nakeer, as occurs in the ahadith. And in the footnote they mention this hadith where it's mentioned about the Munkar and Nakeer. It is reported by Tirmidhi in his Sunan and Ibn Abi Asim in his Sunnah and others, and Ibn Hibban and others, from a hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that when the deceased person is buried in his grave, two angels come to him, or black and blue. One is called Munkar and the other is called Nakeer. The hadith said Hasan, good, by Shaykh al-Albani.